How many customers did you lose last week? You don't know, do you? Here's an even more important question. How many customers almost bought from you, but didn't? Still don't know? One more for you. How many of your successful customers told someone else about you and your business this month? If you can't answer these questions with precise numbers, you're operating without complete information. Why some months you might be up 30% and other months you're struggling to meet your basic expenses. Let's figure out this situation together. We've developed a systematic framework that every single customer moves through for any business based on our experience working with over 100 companies in the educational program that we teach. The problem that we've seen over and over again is that most businesses only track half of it, ignoring the most important parts. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which part of your customer experience is leaking, and even more importantly, the specific order to address each problem. But first, let's start from the very beginning, the framework structure. Your customers aren't random. They move through the same predictable journey every single time. This is what most business owners see. 3 stages: marketing, sales, delivery, and done. That's just incomplete. There are actually 6 separate stages. The first 2 stages seem obvious, but there's a significant inefficiency hiding here. That's why I invited Hayden, one of our course facilitators, to explain each step in detail. Welcome back to the channel, Hayden.
Thanks for having me again, Tiago.
So when you think about customer acquisition, what do most business owners miss in your experience when they think about that for their business?
Most businesses have one person worrying about customer acquisition. More mature businesses would have 2 people with 2 different concerns, right? One person is worrying about marketing. So how do I get more leads in? And then the other person is looking at lead to sale. So how do I convert those leads into sales?
What kinds of businesses would you say really need to start thinking about splitting those 2 functions?
So firstly, I'd say some founders are naturally strong in one of those functions. And because of that, they almost over-index on that function and completely ignore the other side. Maybe if someone comes from a marketing background, or they happen to have a really strong marketing channel, like organic channel, like YouTube, they might be really strong on market to lead. And because of that, they ignore lead to sale. Or the other way around, someone may come from a sales background and they are really good at selling, and they're the champion salesperson in their team, and they totally ignored marketing. So I would probably introspectively look at that and say, am I one of those people?
Quick side note. If you want to understand how this works in your business, there's a customer journey mapping exercise linked below. It takes just 5 minutes. Do it now, pause the video if you have to, because once you see your own customer journey, the gaps in it become completely obvious. Let's say someone's watching this and they're like, you're speaking to me, I'm ready to make this transition, I meet the criteria. If you were to give, let's say, 4 tips or 4 recommendations for how to go about it, what would those be?
So firstly, I would assess market to lead and lead to sale separately. Compare yourself to benchmarks. AI is super, super useful for this. Secondly, I would look at remarketing as much as possible. So re-engaging your existing lead base, that is a gold mine. Thirdly, I would look at your sales funnel. Just understand what your constraint is, right? Is your constraint sales, competent salespeople? If so, then you need to optimize for their talk time. And so you can't have them wasting time on no-shows, and you can't have them talking to unqualified leads. And then lastly, it just makes sure your incentives are aligned in terms of KPI ownership. Don't say, your job is to bring in leads, your job is to sell. Align them by saying your job is to bring in sales qualified leads, work together.
So we've talked about sort of the first 2 stages, which you could call marketing and sales, or market to lead and lead to sales. What comes after that, and how do most business owners typically see it?
They see customer acquisition, how do I acquire a customer, and then fulfillment, or operations. Sometimes they just call it operations. How do I deliver the product?
What people call delivery or fulfillment or even just operations, once again, is 2 parts: delivery and success.
So delivery is, I delivered the product or service. Whereas success is, I have helped my customer get the transformation that they want from that product or service.
I can't help but think about Apple. My first job in college was at an Apple store in San Diego. And I still remember, that they really had to train us extensively in this idea of surprising and delighting. They would use that term because that's not most people's experience of most retail, right? Not at all. And so, but really, even as a 20-year-old, I had to really change my mindset that we're not just, okay, here's your money, there's your computer. I would actually myself lead the trainings every Saturday morning. People would come in, clutching their new MacBook, and I would train them, like, this is how you turn it on, this is how you do that. Like, we really were building that relationship that you're talking about.
Apple's such a great example because ultimately they sell a commodity, right? They sell computers, they sell phones. And yet they've managed through this sort of really intense focus on the customer experience, they've managed to create true fans that will buy every single product as they come out and even line up for hours in order to do so.
You've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room.
So the key to understanding success is actually mapping out your customer journey. And this comes from a whole department within like SaaS and Silicon Valley called customer success, right? And usually in software as a service, they try to understand like milestones, onboarding milestones, and they call them aha moments for the customer, right? So what is kind of their first win with the product?
You have a really awesome framework that I find quite helpful, which is the 5 R's, which kind of gives a framework for thinking about this, right? Could you talk about what those 5 R's are?
Yeah, so the 5 R's are like the 5 R's of customer success, and they're the things that you really should be measuring and improving. The first R is results. In an example with our program, fulfillment might be they graduated. Results would be, all right, what did they actually learn and apply? What actual business transformation happened? The second is retention. Are you building ongoing relationships with your customers that last? So for example, we just finished a cohort and we put in this momentum circle for people so that it was exactly, can we measure results and are we keeping retention going? We're not making money from it, we're not charging for it, but because we're doing these things, we're setting us up to have success with the last 3 R's, which are revenue generating. The third R is reviews, right? And you could also call that testimonials, depends on the type of business. Again, much easier to ask for reviews when you have retention and a relationship and those people have results. The fourth R, which is referrals. So the referrals part when you're mapping out your customer journey, you need to ask like 4 or 5 times. The first time you ask might be when they sign up. You look at a gym or any other kind of ongoing service where accountability is part of it. You can ask, we found that people are way more successful in getting X result if they go through it with a friend who has the same need. Totally. Do you know anyone? What do you think so far? Has this been useful? Ask for a referral. And then the final R is resale. And so resale actually comes in 2 forms. Resale comes in the form of upselling or cross-selling, so selling a different product. And then you can also resell the same product to other groups. So for example, like naturally, in our first cohort of Second Brain, we had one customer who really liked it and then had a larger company and sent his wife and 4 people from his leadership team in the second cohort. And in the third cohort, he wants to send 8 people.
If someone is watching this and thinking, you know what, that's the point that I'm at, I'm ready to start thinking more about success or more systematically about it, creating metrics, all these things, where do you suggest they start?
Outline their customer journey. That's the number one thing. Work with AI. We've got a great prompt that we use in the course, which we can share. And basically have it outline the customer journey for you. Again, you need the context, which you can do using the master prompt, which we've talked about in the past. But it can give you a nice, beautiful, like visual customer journey that you can go back and forth with and improve. That's step 1. Step 2 is share that with your leadership team. I'd say step 3 is actually put someone in charge of customer success and probably have that first meeting between operations, sales, and success to understand and talk about this, and then just start doing it.
All right, so now we've talked about what are the stages 3 and 4 in your overarching framework. Let's move on now to the last stages, to stages 5 and 6.
We've outlined what success looks like for your customer. We've talked about the results that they're seeing. and how you're retaining that customer and that relationship over time. And so that really sets the stage for the stage 5, which is success to market. So specifically, what wins are your customers seeing that you can now share with the world, because your future customers want to see the same wins.
I feel like the classic model of business as a funnel is helpful in just thinking about how each stage depends on the others. But a funnel, if you think about it, is linear, has a top and a bottom. The only way to get more at the bottom is to pour more in the top. Whereas you're talking much more about a flywheel, like you said, where the momentum builds on itself. Momentum leads to more momentum, leads to even more momentum. That strikes me as quite important. Is that how an entrepreneur or business owner eventually gets freedom or gets their time back?
It gives you a really, really useful content flywheel. Most companies don't even really think that much about content or inbound at all. This is how you get ahead of your competition, right? Because if you're doing this and your competition isn't, they're all saying, here are the top 7 blah, blah, blah. And you're saying, here's how this real life customer did this thing and here are the results. From a customer's perspective, it's clear who you'd choose.
Yeah. So now we're finally at the end of the framework. Let's talk about stage 6. What is stage 6?
Stage 6 is success to sale, getting specifically referrals or getting resale. The key to that is actually allocating ownership to someone on the team, probably someone in sales, and giving them an opportunity to make more money. First, it would be outline it. Second, it would be assign it. And then third, it would be, this is probably the hardest part. If you assign it to someone who's not in sales, they're not going to ask. Asking for the offer, like making the offer, asking for the sale, is the hardest thing. And it's the most important attribute of a salesperson. So make sure you're asking. If you're asking, if you outline and you're saying, I'm going to ask 4 times in a period of X days, 90 days in the cycle, I would be really surprised that you don't hit that target. And then every customer, it's a network effect, right? Every customer brings in, half a customer.
Awesome. Well, we've now covered this 6-part framework. I know that I've been implementing it and applying it in my own business, and it's remarkable to think of a business in terms of these very clear stages and very clear segments. And that clarity and those clear distinctions and separations just makes all of our decisions, including decisions and working with AI, so much more targeted and so much more purposeful.
I'm glad it's helped you.
Well, thank you for introducing us to it, and I guess we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiago.
See you, man.
So where should you start? That's the big question. Here's what I suggest as an implementation timeline. Spend somewhere around 1 to 3 hours with the help of AI, completing the customer journey mapping exercise, which you can find in the link below. Then spend around 4 to 7 hours auditing your delivery to success process, using the assessment that we'll also provide below completely for free. Then, if you're on a larger team, spend just an hour or so working with AI to identify and assign who should be responsible for each stage of the pipeline. After that, it depends how much you want to take on. You might spend just a matter of hours or maybe 1 or 2 days, or even as long as a week, implementing your first systematic improvement in whatever is your lowest performing of the 6 stages. Then, depending on how that goes and how long that takes, you'll want to set up measurement systems. What metrics specifically are you measuring to determine whether you're succeeding or not? And then you're probably going to need to iterate on those measurement systems. Now you know the 6 stages. You know who needs to own and be responsible for each one. You have the assessment, which again you can find below to find your gaps. But here's what prevents most businesses that we work with from implementing all this: documentation and training requirements. Documentation in a pre-AI world can take 2 or 3 months at least. Training can easily take, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks. And by the time you're done with all that, the market conditions have completely changed and you have to start over. In this next video, Hayden and I will show you a different approach to this, the master prompt method. We'll teach you exactly how to build your master prompt, your personal information, company context, team structure, even your culture and your values. 30 minutes to set all of that up. From that point forward, AI handles all of the documentation and the putting it into practice.